The great hall of the Galactic Council fell silent as the emergency alarm echoed through the crystal walls. Representatives from 47 different worlds stopped their conversations and turned toward the massive viewing screen that dominated the chamber. The image that appeared made even the most experienced diplomats gasp in horror. A fleet of black ships stretched across space like a disease. Each vessel was the size of a small moon, covered in dark metal that seemed to swallow light itself. The ships moved in perfect formation, leaving trails of destruction behind them. This was the Scythe fleet, and everyone in the galaxy knew what it meant when they appeared. Elder Korath, a being so old that his blue skin had turned almost white, stood slowly from his floating chair. His 4 eyes focused on the screen with the weight of centuries behind them. "How many ships?" he asked quietly. "Over 10,000, Elder," replied the young communications officer, her voice shaking. "They are moving toward the outer rim." A murmur of fear swept through the hall. The Scythe fleet had been destroying civilizations for over 1,000 years. They would arrive at a world, demand surrender, and then strip it of all resources. Any species that resisted was wiped out completely. No one had ever successfully fought them off. "Where are they heading?" asked Zephyrian of the Altair Collective. His tall, thin frame leaned forward in concern. Unlike the others, his people had once faced the Scythes and barely escaped by fleeing to another star system. The communications officer checked her instruments twice before answering. "The Sol system, Elder, the 3rd planet." Every being in the hall turned to look at each other. Sol 3 was Earth, home to the humans. The Galactic Council had been watching the humans for over 50 years, but they had never made contact. The humans were still using chemical rockets and had barely left their own planet. By galactic law, they were classified as a pre-contact civilization. "We must warn them," Zephyrian said, standing up. His voice carried across the hall. "We cannot let another species die without at least telling them what is coming." Elder Korath shook his ancient head. "You know the law, Zephyrian. We do not interfere with pre-contact civilizations. The humans do not even know we exist, but they will all die." Zephyrian's voice cracked with emotion. "The Scythes will destroy them just like they destroyed the Kithra, the Bendali, and hundreds of others. We have the power to save them, and we choose to do nothing." Other council members began to argue. Some agreed with Zephyrian, saying that watching a genocide was wrong. Others supported the Elder, reminding everyone that the non-interference law existed for good reasons. The humans were primitive by galactic standards. They still fought wars among themselves and had not even unified their own planet. "Look at their technology," said Counselor Vrex, her insect-like body clicking as she moved. "They have nuclear weapons that they point at each other. Their fastest ships barely reach their own moon. What could they possibly do against the Scythe fleet?" The argument continued for several minutes until Elder Korath raised one of his 4 hands. "Enough, the law is clear. We will observe and record as we always have. Perhaps the humans will surprise us." No one in the hall believed that. The humans seemed nice enough from what the council had observed. They created art, music, and stories. They cared for their young and showed kindness to animals. But they were also violent, divided, and technologically behind every other spacefaring race in the galaxy. The viewing screen switched to show Earth itself. The blue and green planet looked peaceful as it spun slowly in space. Cities glowed like tiny stars on the night side. During the day, the council could see the humans going about their normal lives, completely unaware of what was heading toward them. "How long do they have?" Elder Korath asked quietly. "The Scythe fleet will reach Earth in 72 hours, came the reply. 72 hours. That was not enough time for the humans to escape even if they knew what was coming. Their ships were too slow and they had nowhere to go. The nearest habitable planet was over 4 light-years away. The council members returned to their seats and watched in grim silence. This was always the hardest part of their job, watching species die and being unable to help them. The law existed because early contact often destroyed primitive civilizations, just as surely as conquest did. But it never made the watching easier. On the screen, Earth continued its peaceful rotation. The humans had no idea that death was coming for them. They went to work, played with their children, and made plans for the future that they would never see. "At least it will be quick," someone whispered. "The Scythes always offer surrender first. When the humans see the fleet, they will give up immediately. Most species do." Elder Korath nodded sadly. That was true. When faced with 10,000 ships, each one capable of destroying a planet, most civilizations surrendered without fighting. The Scythes would then take all the useful resources and leave the population alive but enslaved. It was horrible, but it was better than extinction. Activate all observation networks, the Elder commanded. If we cannot save them, we will at least record their final hours for history. Across the galaxy, hidden monitoring stations turned their sensors toward Earth. The Council had been studying humans for decades, fascinated by their unusual behavior. Most species became peaceful as they advanced technologically, but humans seemed to become more creative in their violence. They made movies about fighting aliens, wrote books about galactic wars, and spent enormous amounts of money on weapons that they never used. The Council had always found this behavior strange, but harmless. After all, what good were weapons against enemies that did not exist? The humans were alone in their part of the galaxy. The nearest intelligent species was hundreds of light years away. As the hours passed, the Scythe fleet grew larger on the viewing screens. The black ships moved with terrible purpose, spreading out as they approached the Sol system. Soon they would be close enough for the humans to detect them with their primitive instruments. Zephyrian remained in his seat, staring at the screen with a heavy heart. His people had survived the Scythes by running away, abandoning their homeworld and everything they had built. But the humans had nowhere to run. They were trapped on their single planet with ships that could barely reach their own moon. "I hope they surrender quickly," he said quietly to himself. "I hope they do not try to fight." Elder Korath heard him and nodded in agreement. Fighting the Scythe fleet was suicide. Every species that had tried to resist was completely destroyed. The Scythes did not take prisoners from those who fought back. The viewing screen showed Earth one more time. The planet looked so small and fragile compared to the massive fleet approaching it. Soon the blue world would be nothing but another mining operation in the Scythe's vast empire. The Council settled in to watch what they believed would be humanity's final day. None of them could imagine what was actually about to happen. They had studied humans for decades, but they had completely misunderstood what they were seeing. The greatest surprise in galactic history was about to begin, and the Galactic Council had front-row seats to watch it unfold. The Scythe fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system exactly when predicted. The massive black ships spread out in a formation that had terrified hundreds of worlds before. Each vessel was a monument to destruction, bristling with weapons that could crack planets in half. In the Galactic Council chamber, all eyes were fixed on the viewing screen. The representatives watched in somber silence as the fleet took its positions around Earth's solar system. This was always how it began, the same pattern that had played out across the galaxy for 1,000 years. "Broadcasting surrender demands now," reported the communications officer. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook as she worked her controls. Everyone knew what came next. The Scythes would offer terms, the primitive humans would panic and accept, and another world would fall under their dark rule. The surrender broadcast was transmitted on every frequency that the humans used. Radio, television, internet. Every communication method on Earth received the same message simultaneously. The translation programs made the words understandable in every human language. The message was simple and had never changed. "This is the Scythe fleet of the Great Harvest. Your world has been selected for resource extraction. Surrender immediately and your population will be preserved as workers. Resist and face complete extinction. You have 1 hour to respond." Elder Korath leaned back in his chair and waited. An hour was generous by Scythe standards. Most species needed only minutes to accept the inevitable. The humans would look up at their sky, see the massive ships, and give up immediately. But something strange happened. Instead of the usual terrified silence or quick surrender, Earth's communications networks exploded with activity. Radio transmissions, television broadcasts, and internet traffic increased by thousands of % in just the first few minutes. "What are they saying?" asked Zephyrian, leaning forward in his seat. The communications officer looked confused as she read her instruments. They are responding in dozens of different languages, Elder. The translation programs are having trouble keeping up." "Are they surrendering?" Elder Korath asked. "No, Elder. None of them are surrendering." The officer's voice grew more puzzled. "Some are asking questions about who we are and what we want. Others are making what the computer classifies as insults." A murmur of surprise rippled through the council chamber. Insults. No species had ever responded to the Scythe fleet with insults. Fear, panic, immediate surrender. These were normal responses. But insults? Show us, commanded the Elder. The viewing screen split to show dozens of human communication channels. News anchors spoke rapidly in different languages. Government officials held emergency meetings. Military personnel ran between buildings with serious expressions. But nowhere could the council observers see the terror and despair they expected. "This is CNN with breaking news," said one human broadcaster. "Alien ships have appeared throughout our solar system." We go now to our military analyst for his assessment of the situation. The screen showed a human male in military uniform. He looked calm and professional as he spoke. "Well, Tom, based on the size and positioning of these vessels, this appears to be a hostile invasion force. I recommend immediate implementation of Protocol 7. Protocol 7? The news anchor looked confused. What is Protocol 7? That's classified, Tom. But I can say that we've been preparing for this possibility for quite some time. In the council chamber, representatives looked at each other in amazement. Protocol 7? Preparing for this possibility? The humans had been expecting an alien invasion? The communications officer continued monitoring Earth's transmissions. "Elder, I'm picking up rapid mobilization of military forces across the entire planet. Their armies are moving to defensive positions." "That is impossible," said Counselor Vrex. "They do not have the technology to fight the Scythe fleet." "Why are they not surrendering?" More transmissions poured in from Earth. The humans were not just refusing to surrender, they were actively preparing for war. Ancient enemies were suddenly working together. Countries that had been fighting for decades were sharing military resources. The entire species was unifying with a speed that defied every model of primitive behavior the Council had studied. Then came the moment that would be talked about in the galaxy for centuries to come. The Scythe fleet, frustrated by the lack of surrender, decided to demonstrate their power. They targeted Earth's moon with their planet-killer weapons. The moon simply disappeared. One moment it was there, a bright silver disk in Earth's sky. The next moment it was gone, reduced to scattered debris and expanding clouds of gas. It was a show of force designed to terrify any watching civilization into immediate submission. The council members watched Earth's communication networks, expecting to see panic and surrender broadcasts. Instead, something incredible happened. Instead of despair, the networks filled with a single word in every major Earth language. War. "This is the President of the United States," came a broadcast from one of Earth's major nations. "The aliens have fired the first shot. As of this moment, we are at war. God help us all, but we will not go quietly." Similar declarations came from every major government on Earth. The humans were not surrendering. They were fighting back against odds that should have made resistance unthinkable. "This is impossible," whispered Elder Korath. "How can they be so calm? They just watched their moon get destroyed." The answer came from the humans themselves. A military officer on one of their television networks explained it with chilling clarity. "We always knew this day might come. Humanity has spent the last century preparing for the possibility of hostile alien contact. Every science fiction movie, every video game, every military simulation, we've been training for this war our entire lives." The communications officer looked up from her station with wide eyes. "Elder, the humans are launching spacecraft. Hundreds of them. They're primitive rockets?" asked Counselor Vrex dismissively. "What damage can chemical propulsion do against the Scythe fleet?" But as the viewing screen showed Earth's orbital region, it became clear that these were not the primitive spacecraft the Council had been observing for decades. Hidden installations across Earth's continents were revealing themselves, launching sleek military vessels that moved with purpose and power. The humans had been hiding their true capabilities. Military bases that the Council had thought were civilian research facilities were opening to reveal massive spacecraft assembly areas. Satellites that had been classified as communication devices were powering up weapons systems. Even civilian spacecraft were being rapidly converted into military vessels. "Where did all of this come from?" Zephyrian asked in amazement. The answer became clear as more human communications were intercepted. The species that the Council had thought was primitive and divided had actually been secretly preparing for interstellar war for decades. Every major nation had hidden military space programs. Their primitive technology was just what they allowed outsiders to see. The Scythe fleet, which had expected to face a helpless population, suddenly found itself looking at an enemy that was not only prepared to fight but seemed excited about the opportunity. A human military commander's voice came over the radio. "All units, this is command. The aliens just made a big mistake. They destroyed our moon, but they left us alive. Let's show them what happens when you pick a fight with humanity." Elder Korath stared at the viewing screen as human warships moved into position around their planet. The species he had thought was primitive was revealing military capabilities that rivaled some advanced civilizations. "What have we been watching?" he whispered to himself. The answer was becoming terrifyingly clear. They had not been observing a primitive species struggling to reach the stars. They had been watching a species that was too busy turning their entire civilization into a fortress to bother with. Peaceful space exploration. The Scythe fleet was about to learn why that was a very bad thing for anyone who threatened them. The first wave of human defenders launched from Earth like angry wasps from a disturbed hive. What the Galactic Council had believed were primitive chemical rockets revealed themselves as sophisticated combat vessels, their true nature hidden beneath decades of careful deception. From concealed military installations across every continent, sleek warships rose into the darkness of space. These were not the clunky, slow vessels that humans had been using for their civilian space program. These ships moved with deadly grace, their hulls covered in armor that absorbed sensor scans and weapons that glowed with barely contained energy. In the council chamber, representatives watched in stunned silence as the human fleet took formation around their homeworld. The ships were smaller than Scythe vessels, but there were thousands of them, and they moved with a coordination that spoke of years of hidden training. "How many ships are they launching?" Elder Korath asked, his 4 eyes wide with disbelief. "Over 3,000 so far, Elder," replied the communications officer, "and more are launching every minute. They have hidden spaceports on every continent and under their oceans, and even built into their polar ice caps." The Scythe fleet, which had expected to face a helpless world, suddenly found itself staring at an enemy that had been preparing for this exact battle. The black ships began moving into attack formation, but something was wrong. The humans were not running away or trying to hide behind their planet. They were advancing to meet the attackers. "This is Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Force," came a transmission from the lead human ship. Her voice was calm and professional, as if she commanded space fleets every day of her life. "Alien vessels, you have committed an act of war against humanity by destroying our moon. We demand your immediate withdrawal from our solar system." Counselor Vrex's insect-like body clicked with nervous energy. "Demand? They are demanding that the Scythe fleet withdraw? Have they lost their minds?" But the humans were not finished. "If you do not withdraw within 10 minutes, Admiral Chen continued, we will consider you hostile invaders and respond accordingly. This is your only warning." The Scythe commander's response was predictable. A massive beam of energy lanced out from the flagship, targeting the lead human vessel. The beam was powerful enough to vaporize a city, and everyone in the council chamber expected to see the human ship simply disappear. Instead, the human ship's shields flared bright blue and absorbed the blast. The vessel shuddered but held together, and immediately returned fire with weapons that shouldn't have existed on a primitive world. Electromagnetic railguns launched projectiles at incredible speeds, tearing through scythe armor like paper. Directed energy weapons carved molten lines across the black hulls. Nuclear missiles, fired from hidden platforms throughout the solar system, began detonating against scythe shields with devastating effect. But what shocked the council observers most was not the power of human weapons. It was how the humans fought. Every other species the council had observed fought in predictable patterns. They used standard formations, followed logical tactics, and tried to minimize losses. The humans fought like creatures possessed. Their ships performed maneuvers that should have killed everyone aboard, pulling accelerations that would liquefy most species. "Look at that." Zephyrian pointed at the viewing screen where a human fighter had just rammed itself directly into a scythe cruiser's weapon array. "They are sacrificing themselves deliberately." But it was not random suicide. The human pilot had calculated exactly where to hit to cause maximum damage to the enemy ship's offensive capabilities. As his fighter exploded, it took out the cruiser's main weapons, leaving it helpless against follow-up attacks from other human vessels. More disturbing still was the discovery that this was not desperate improvisation. It was clearly trained doctrine. Human ships were built with redundant systems, multiple backup controls, and armor that was designed to keep fighting even after taking massive damage. These were vessels designed by engineers, who assumed they would always be outnumbered and outgunned. "Their military doctrine is insane," whispered Counselor Vrex as she watched human pilots ram their fighters into scythe point defense systems, clearing the way for larger ships to attack. "They fight as if death in battle is preferable to defeat." The communications officer looked up from her station with a pale face. "I am intercepting their military communications, Elder. They are not panicking. They are excited." Indeed, the radio chatter between human ships was unlike anything the Council had ever heard in combat. Instead of fear and desperation, the humans sounded like they were enjoying themselves. "This is Ghost Squadron. We have visual on target Bravo 7. Beginning attack run. Copy, Ghost Squadron. Watch for their point defense. Try the spiral approach we practiced." "Roger that, Control. Time to see if all those simulations were worth anything." Simulations. The humans had been running battle simulations. They had not just prepared for this war. They had been training for it like it was an inevitable sporting event. As the battle continued, patterns began to emerge that made the Council observers increasingly uncomfortable. The humans were not just defending their planet. They were learning from every engagement. Each attack taught them something new about scythe technology and tactics, and they adapted faster than their enemies could adjust. Human combat engineers worked frantically on captured scythe technology, reverse engineering weapons and defensive systems in real time during the battle. Modified human weapons began appearing that used scythe power sources, but with improvements that made them more efficient than the originals. How are they modifying alien technology so quickly? Elder Korath asked in amazement as he watched human technicians install captured scythe shield generators on their own ships. The answer came from intercepted human communications. "Engineering Corps has been studying the theoretical weaknesses of energy-based civilizations for 40 years. We know exactly what to look for." 40 years. The humans had been preparing for this specific type of enemy for 4 decades, developing countermeasures for weapons and defenses they had never seen but had imagined in remarkable detail. The tide of battle began to turn as human orbital defense platforms came online. What the Council had thought were communication satellites revealed themselves as heavily armed weapons platforms. Earth's moon might be gone, but it had been replaced by a network of artificial battle stations that had been built in secret over decades. Massive railguns fired solid projectiles the size of skyscrapers directly into the heart of the scythe formation. Nuclear mines, disguised as space debris, detonated in carefully planned sequences that channeled the enemy fleet into killing zones where human weapons could do maximum damage. The scythe fleet found itself fighting an enemy that had turned their entire solar system into a weapon. Asteroids had been converted into missile platforms. Comets had been fitted with nuclear warheads and guidance systems. Even the gas giants had orbital installations that launched swarms of attack drones. But perhaps most disturbing of all was the realization that the humans were not just fighting to survive. They were fighting to win. Every tactic, every sacrifice, every desperate maneuver was part of a larger strategy that treated the scythe fleet not as an unstoppable force of nature, but as a problem to be solved. As scythe casualties mounted and their formation began to break apart under the relentless human assault, something unprecedented happened. For the first time in 400 years of conquest, a scythe commander opened communications with an enemy during battle. "Human vessels," came the transmission. "We are prepared to negotiate terms." Admiral Chen's response was immediate and chilling. "The time for negotiation ended when you destroyed our moon. Surrender or be destroyed. Those are your only options." In the council chamber, Elder Korath leaned back in his chair with a look of profound shock on his ancient face. The humans were not just resisting the scythe fleet. They were winning, and they were demanding the surrender of the most feared military force in the galaxy. The battle for Earth entered its second day, and what had begun as an expected massacre had become something the galaxy had never seen before. The scythe fleet, masters of conquest for over a millennium, was being systematically dismantled by a species they had dismissed as primitive. In the Galactic Council chamber, representatives who had come to witness humanity's final hours now watched in fascinated horror as the humans revealed the true depth of their preparation. Every hour brought new revelations about just how wrong the Council had been about Earth's inhabitants. Status report, Elder Korath commanded, though his voice carried none of its usual authority. The past 24 hours had shaken his understanding of the galaxy to its core. Scythe fleet casualties now exceed 30%, reported the communications officer. Human losses are approximately 15%, but their production facilities are replacing destroyed ships faster than they lose them. Production facilities. The humans were building new warships during the battle, using automated factories that had been hidden beneath their cities for decades. While the Scythe fleet had to rely on ships they had brought with them, the humans were treating this like a total war, where their entire civilization was the weapon. Counselor Vrex watched as human salvage teams systematically stripped technology from destroyed Scythe vessels. They are not just fighting, she observed with her clicking voice. They are studying everything. Each engagement teaches them more about their enemies. It was true. Human engineers had set up field laboratories and asteroid bases throughout their solar system, analyzing captured Scythe technology with a speed and understanding that defied explanation. Within hours of capturing their first intact Scythe weapon, human ships began deploying improved versions that used the same principles, but with modifications that made them more efficient. "How is this possible?" asked Zephyrian. "They are a pre-contact civilization. They should not understand energy manipulation at this level." The answer came from intercepted human military communications. A scientist's voice crackled over the radio as she explained modifications to a captured Scythe shield generator. The theoretical framework was already in our databases. Dr. Peterson published papers on this exact energy configuration 30 years ago. We just never had the materials to build it until now. 30 years ago, the humans had been developing theoretical weapons and defenses for decades, waiting for the day when they might encounter the technology needed to make their ideas reality. They had been preparing not just militarily, but scientifically for a war with technologically superior aliens. The Council watched in growing amazement as human ships began using hybrid weapons that combined their own technology with captured Scythe systems. Nuclear warheads powered by alien energy cores proved devastatingly effective against the Scythe's own shields. Human railguns loaded with Scythe armor-piercing rounds cut through the black ships like they were made of paper. But it was the psychological warfare that truly disturbed the Council observers. The humans had begun broadcasting messages directly to individual Scythe ships, messages that showed a terrifying understanding of their enemy's psychology. Scythe Vessel Designation 77 Alpha, came a transmission from human forces. "You are surrounded and cut off from your fleet. Your shield generators are failing and your weapons are depleted. Your crew has already demonstrated cowardice by requesting negotiations. Surrender now, and you will be treated according to the Geneva Conventions." Geneva Conventions. The humans had laws governing the treatment of prisoners of war. Even though they had never fought an interstellar conflict before, they had somehow anticipated the moral and legal complexities of alien warfare. More disturbing was the realization that the humans knew enough about Scythe culture to use their own concepts of honor against them. The accusation of cowardice was particularly effective because Scythe society was built on the concept of inevitable victory. Being called cowards by their intended victims was psychologically devastating. The Scythe response was predictable but disastrous for their cause. Enraged by the insults, individual Scythe commanders began breaking formation to attack human ships directly, abandoning the coordinated tactics that had made them so effective. The humans had turned the Scythe's own pride into a weapon against them. Elder Korath watched as the once mighty Scythe fleet fragmented into angry individual ships that the humans picked off one by one. "They are hurting them," he realized with growing horror. The humans are using psychology to manipulate the Scythe's actions. It was worse than that. The humans had somehow developed detailed profiles of Scythe psychology, culture, and military doctrine without ever having met them before. Their entertainment media was filled with stories about alien invasions, and apparently they had used those stories to develop strategies for fighting enemies they had never encountered. "This is impossible," whispered Counselor Vrex as she watched human forces execute a maneuver that split the Scythe fleet into 3 isolated groups. They cannot have predicted Scythe tactics this accurately. But they had. Human military academies had been running theoretical war games against hypothetical alien invaders for over a century. Every possible invasion scenario had been imagined, analyzed, and planned for by a species that seemed to consider warfare against superior enemies a form of intellectual exercise. The breakthrough moment came when the humans launched Operation Slingshot. Using their own sun's gravity well, they accelerated captured Scythe vessels loaded with nuclear warheads directly into the heart of the enemy formation. The kamikaze attack was devastating, but what made it truly terrifying was its precision. The humans had calculated the exact gravitational effects needed to hit specific ships in the Scythe formation. They had turned their own star into a weapon, using physics and mathematics to deliver warheads with surgical precision across millions of kilometers of space. How did they calculate those trajectories so accurately? Zephyrian asked in amazement as he watched human weapons curve around planets and through asteroid fields to hit their targets with perfect accuracy. They have been running computer simulations of solar system warfare for decades, came the intercepted response from a human mission controller. Every graduate student in astrophysics has run models like this. We just never had a reason to fire them for real. Graduate students. The humans had been training their young people to fight interstellar wars as part of their education system. What the Council had thought was peaceful scientific research had actually been military preparation disguised as academic study. The Scythe fleet's casualties mounted rapidly as Operation Slingshot tore through their formation. Ships that had conquered hundreds of worlds found themselves defenseless against weapons that used the laws of physics as ammunition. The black vessels that had inspired terror across the galaxy were being destroyed by modified asteroids and nuclear-powered comets. For the first time in recorded galactic history, a Scythe commander requested reinforcements. The message was intercepted by human forces and broadcast on all frequencies. This is Fleet Commander Krex to Scythe High Command. Request immediate reinforcement of the Sol system. Enemy capabilities exceed all projections. Repeat. Request immediate reinforcement. The human response was swift and brutal. Admiral Chen's voice cut across all frequencies. Fleet Commander Krex, this is Admiral Chen of Earth Defense Force. Your reinforcements are not coming. We have been monitoring your communications since this battle began. We know your fleet movements, your supply lines, and your weakness. Surrender now, or we will demonstrate why you should have left us alone. In the council chamber, Elder Korath felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Fear. The humans were not just winning a defensive battle. They were threatening to go on the offensive against the Scythe Empire itself. The species that the Council had thought was too primitive for contact had just declared war on the most powerful military force in the galaxy. And from what they had seen so far, the humans might actually win. The end came swiftly and with a finality that would reshape galactic politics forever. The Scythe fleet, once the terror of the galaxy, was in full retreat from Earth's solar system. Their black ships, damaged and demoralized, limped toward the edge of human space, while Earth's defenders harried them every step of the way. In the Galactic Council chamber, representatives from 47 worlds watched in stunned silence as the impossible became reality. The humans had not only survived first contact with the Scythe fleet, they had won decisively and were now pursuing the retreating enemy ships. Scythe fleet casualties now exceed 70%, reported the communications officer, her voice barely above a whisper. Remaining ships are in full retreat. Human forces are following them. The humans were not content to simply defend their homeworld. They were chasing the Scythe fleet out of their solar system, attacking damaged ships and capturing others for study. It was behavior unprecedented in galactic history. Elder Korath leaned forward in his chair, his ancient face showing an expression none of the council members had seen before. Uncertainty. Are they planning to pursue the Scythes beyond their own star system? The answer came from intercepted human military communications. This is Admiral Chen to all pursuit squadrons. Maintain pressure on retreating enemy forces, but do not follow beyond the heliopause. We have what we came for, what they came for, The humans spoke as if this entire battle had been fought to achieve specific objectives rather than simple survival, as if they had planned not just to survive the Scythe invasion, but to benefit from it. Counselor Vrex clicked nervously as she processed the tactical reports. What did they gain from this battle? The answer became clear as the council reviewed the engagement. The humans had captured hundreds of intact Scythe vessels, thousands of prisoners, and complete databases of Scythe technology and military intelligence. In 3 days of fighting, they had acquired centuries' worth of advanced alien science and detailed information about galactic military capabilities. But more than that, they had announced their existence to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. Every civilization in known space had heard about the species that made the Scythe fleet retreat. The humans had gone from unknown primitives to the most feared military force in the galaxy overnight. "Show me their casualty reports," Elder Korath commanded. The viewing screen displayed human losses from the 3-day battle. The numbers were shocking, but not in the way the council expected. Despite being outnumbered 10-1 by a technologically superior enemy, human casualties were remarkably light. Their redundant systems, defensive doctrine, and willingness to sacrifice individual ships for strategic advantage had minimized their losses while maximizing enemy damage more. Disturbing was the discovery that the humans were already replacing their losses. Production facilities across Earth were working at maximum capacity, building new ships using hybrid human Scythe technology. The species that had hidden their capabilities for decades was now openly displaying military-industrial capacity that rivaled the greatest powers in the galaxy. "They were never primitive," Zephyrian said quietly, his voice filled with awe and fear. "We completely misunderstood what we were observing. It was true. The council had seen humans fighting among themselves and assumed they were a violent, chaotic species. But those conflicts had actually been training exercises for the day when they would face external threats. Every war, every military innovation, every strategic doctrine had been preparation for this moment." The viewing screen showed Earth's surface, where massive celebrations were taking place in every major city. The humans were not mourning their losses or cowering in fear of future attacks. They were celebrating their victory like it was the greatest achievement in their species' history. "Listen to their broadcasts," the communications officer said, activating the audio feed from Earth. "Today, humanity proved that we are not alone in the universe," came a speech from one of their world leaders. "Today we proved that we belong among the stars. Today we took our first step toward becoming a true galactic civilization." Galactic civilization. The humans were already making plans to expand beyond their solar system. They spoke of interstellar exploration and diplomatic contact, as if conquering the Scythe fleet was just the first item on a very long agenda. Elder Korath turned to address the council. "We need to make a decision. How do we classify this species?" The question that had seemed simple just days ago now carried enormous implications. The humans could no longer be considered a pre-contact civilization. They had fought and won a major interstellar battle, captured advanced technology, and demonstrated military capabilities that exceeded many established galactic powers. They are clearly post-contact. "Now," said Counselor Vrex, "the question is whether they are potential allies or potential threats." The debate that followed was unlike any in council history. Half the representatives argued for immediate diplomatic contact, reasoning that any species capable of defeating the Scythe fleet would be valuable as an ally. The other half argued for continued monitoring, fearing that humanity's aggressive nature made them too dangerous to approach directly. The discussion was interrupted by an urgent signal from the communications station. "Elder," the officer called out, "we are receiving a transmission from Earth. It is addressed to the Galactic Council." Every being in the chamber turned to stare at the communication station. The humans were contacting them directly. But how did they even know the council existed? "Put it through," Elder Korath commanded. The viewing screen flickered and then showed a human woman in military uniform. She was seated in what appeared to be a command center, with other humans working at various stations in the background. Her expression was calm and professional. "Greetings to the Galactic Council," she began, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who had just won the greatest victory in her species' history. "I am Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Force. We know you have been observing our world for many years, and we know you witnessed our recent conflict with the Scythe fleet. The council members looked at each other in shock. The humans knew about their observation programs. They knew the council existed. How long had they known? Admiral Chen continued speaking. We understand your non-interference policies, and we respect your decision not to warn us about the approaching invasion. However, circumstances have now changed. Humanity is ready for formal contact with galactic civilization. Ready for formal contact. The humans were not asking for permission to join galactic society. They were announcing their intention to do so. We have several proposals for mutual cooperation, the Admiral said, gesturing to documents being held by other humans in the background. We are prepared to share our military innovations in exchange for advanced scientific knowledge. We are also prepared to offer our services in dealing with other hostile forces that may threaten peaceful civilizations. Services in dealing with hostile forces. The humans were offering to become the galaxy's military protectors. The species that had just destroyed the Scythe fleet was volunteering to fight other wars on behalf of civilizations that could not defend themselves. We will maintain a diplomatic station at the edge of our solar system for any representatives who wish to establish formal relations, Admiral Chen concluded. We look forward to productive relationships with all peaceful species in the galaxy. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in absolute silence. The humans had just announced their arrival on the galactic stage and offered terms for their participation in interstellar politics. They had gone from unknown primitives to major galactic power in the span of 3 days. Elder Korath slowly rose from his chair and looked around the chamber at the other representatives. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of profound realization. We have been observing humanity for decades, he said quietly. We classified them as a pre-contact civilization because they had not yet reached the stars. We failed to consider the possibility that they had not reached the stars because they were too busy preparing for the day when the stars would reach them. He paused and looked at the viewing screen, which now showed Earth surrounded by human warships and captured Scythe vessels. Any species that can make the Scythe fleet retreat is either the most dangerous enemy we could face, he continued, or the most valuable ally we could have. I suggest we choose our next actions very carefully. The motion to establish formal diplomatic contact with humanity passed unanimously. For the first time in galactic history, the Council voted to contact a species not because they were ready to join galactic civilization, but because galactic civilization needed to be ready for them. The age of human expansion was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same.